Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Reckoning of Roku chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 16, which is called Bones in the Earth. Once again, YouTube channel membership is enabled if you want to help support the channel, and subscribing would be very helpful also. But we'll jump in here. We're back with Malia, and of course Malia is on her way to go and see Ulo again because she wants to get the sort of direct confirmation and, in a way, the truth about the position of Scout. Is it that they actually are meant to kill every outsider they come across? Surely that's not the case. And this is going to be a very kind of life-altering discussion that she has here with Ulo, because it will confirm some harsh truths about the clan to her if that turns out to be the case. So that is the setup kind of as Malia arrives back at the kind of main where the clan lives on the island. So she heads down into the caves. Now again, we've had the mention of the sacred cave where young Gib is, but specifically we get the idea that there's a labyrinth of tunnels kind of underground formed by ancient lava flows. And so she's heading through these tunnels to, this is where she's been told Ulo is at the moment. And so she eventually finds him in these tunnels, basically, and he's touching up the murals that are on the walls here with charcoal. So he's just, I suppose, redoing them again so that they're kind of clearer here. And these are obviously depicting the events in the history of the island. So these are some of the stories that he tells in sort of visual form here. So he continues to work as he knows that she's there. And he kind of keeps her waiting here. She, of course, doesn't want to insult him, so she waits until, like, he gestures her over, basically. And so, yeah, eventually we get them talking here. And he immediately says to her, "You failed, didn't you?" basically. And so what we then get to is, this is the type of character that he is. He's like, "You failed," giant pause. "Do you remember the story of the Ibalon clan?" And Malia's like, yes, Ulo, I do. And so he tells the story anyway. So we get this idea. We've had another one of these stories, and this is somewhat similar. Long ago, the Ibalon clan lived along the Oriol River. One day, a group of waterbenders shipwrecked on the southern coast. In their search for help, they discovered the Ibalon village. Despite the advice of other clan chiefs, the Ibalon decided to welcome the survivors, tended to their wounds, and we get the whole idea of, sort of like a lot of the legends, even the Asho legend, of like, they helped out the people who come to the island, and then they basically just say, as they let the waterbenders go, don't tell anyone about the island. And then he turns to Malia and says, "And what happened after they left? What happened next?" And she says, A few moons later, more waterbenders arrived and wiped the Ibalon from the riverside." And Ulo's like, yes. But in her head, we get the narration here. Was that true? And she's asking all these questions because, once again, she notes, in this specific story, apparently the river, instead of being the Oriol as told here, it was meant to be the Tunasan river, but he changed it for whatever reason. And she's just like, I'm not naive like Amihan thought. I had suspicions about a lot of this stuff, but surely it's not as dark as it kind of comes across here. So the questions that she asks is, had there ever even been an Ibalon clan? Maybe there had been. Maybe they'd killed the waterbenders on sight and they just altered the story. Maybe it was one of the island's other clans that killed the river people. And so you're getting all these like ideas here of like, okay, this is where I kind of wish they'd maybe gone a little bit more in depth in terms of exploring this island, in terms of, we seem to have one, main clan here. But then we get this idea, like, it's when it says the island's other clans, it has an insert that says perhaps her own, suggesting that, like, okay, so Malia is from a specific individual clan on the island, and that there is a history of this island of like different groups and different clans, but now they're mostly down to one. So there's a lot of questions that you have about, okay, like in the past, how many clans did live on the island, because all the stories are basically about different clans getting wiped out by the firebenders arriving, the waterbenders arriving. But it's a little bit like, and really they had no interaction with the other clans. But then you get the idea of, well, if one clan had a specific kind of habit of, taking out people, who's to say that's not how a lot of this happened? And so she's kind of asking the right questions here of like, clearly there's something in the history of the island about like clans or different groups of people used to be here or discovered it in the past and have been since wiped out. That's the kind of whole idea here. But she has learned, of course, not to ask any of these questions, just because it's the rule on the island is that you don't question Ulo and you don't question like the stories, the history of the island, or you are questioning everything that the clan stands for, basically. So Ulo turns it back around to her again. It's like, okay, the Earthbenders are moving inland. What should we do next? And it's a test. He wants her to give him the answer, which is he wants her to say, we have to kill them. But she, of course, doesn't want to say that. She doesn't want that to be the truth. But it's at this moment, I think she realizes that, oh, it basically is the case. He's asking for this. And this is where the title drop happens of like, had any outsiders ever sailed safely home? Or were they all bones in the earth of this island? So she can't bring herself to answer the question and instead says, there has to be another way. And Ulo's like, oh? They don't deserve to die. And this is where suddenly the tension rises. He clenches his jaw. He stops what he's doing. And he drops the charcoal. And then in an instant, Malia is encased in ice. And it just describes that Ulo snaps his hands upwards. So he's just like, phew, and she's encased in ice. Because again, we know Ulo is a waterbender, but the interesting point here is that they're in a cave. There's like basically no pools of water or obvious like water here, especially enough to encase someone entirely in ice. So where'd the water come from? The way it's described earlier on in the chapter is that it is a damp cave. So there's that. Also, they're on the foggy island, of course, so that suggests moisture in the air. But still, a super impressive waterbending feat to go in an instant from there's dampness in the air to he has encased a person like pretty much entirely in ice. And this is obviously our first kind of hint of this enhanced bending. Of course, because we don't get the details on this until later on, but the idea is we're relatively close to the sacred cave, which ends up being an important detail in how this happens. And so there's a sense of, oh, okay, he's channeling a little bit of that, and so we get to see that here. We know that it's kind of like a master level move to be able to pull water, like actual usable water, out of the air. But this is a level beyond that. Like, this is definitely a bit of an enhanced kind of move here from someone who's clearly a master waterbender as well. So, impressive stuff here. But he says to her, as she's encased in ice, do we deserve to die? And this is his entire point. But she can't reply because she's encased in ice. She's wondering, like, am I going to stop breathing in a second? How long until frostbite kicks in? Is this how I die? Basically encased in ice by the clan chief. But in an instant, once again, the ice all melts away. But of course, she's shivering because she was in ice for a little bit. And immediately Ulo goes back to his sort of like normal self. He kind of puts his blanket over the top of her, starts rubbing her back, and is like, I'm sorry, I forgot myself for a moment. This is the first time since you've become a scout that you've encountered outsiders. I understand that you might find the reality surprising, objectionable to what we have to do. And Malia's just stunned at this. She can't believe that Ulo could do this. She literally says it here. Was Ulo really powerful enough to pull moisture from the air and to form the ice around her? So she notes this is a particularly impressive bending feat. But anyway, he says, smart girl, I know you will understand. But she just has more and more doubts about this. But he does go on to explain, and he presents, I think, a bit more of his point other than just outsiders bad. Here's him explaining it, I think, a little bit better. The mother and daughter you've grown so fond of are accompanied by guards. They are not here simply to enjoy the sights of our beautiful island. They serve someone. The knowledge and samples they collect, the maps and drawings they make, the notes they take and the scrolls they write, all of these will pass out of their hands eventually, and then, no matter how well-intentioned the mother and daughter may be, their knowledge will be used against us, against young Gib. History tells us it is inevitable. So that's the better argument, I suppose, from him. It is still, obviously, like, quite extreme negativity towards outsiders, but if indeed the clan actually has the history of potentially losing many of their own clans to outsiders, then you do understand where this comes from. But is that enough to justify this approach to dealing with outsiders and many of the things that the islanders actually do? That's a separate story. But they highlight, of course, that the details that we haven't really got about why the Earthbenders are here. So again, the details we have now are that it's pretty clear it's not really the Earth Kingdom trying to take over the island. They're here looking for something. And that's why, you know, he's highlighting here. They're making notes of all the stuff that's unique about our island. And eventually that information will get to someone who will then decide that, hey, we want to get that stuff, and they'll come here, and basically the idea is the stories from our history, there will be a new one. And I think that's the point that he's making of, like, do you want our clan to be the next story of the Ibalon clan, that style thing. But again, she's still shivering, she can't speak. He says, it's admirable that you respect life. We need more in our clan like you. I hope your empathy does not fade with time, as often happens as we age. But our empathy can cloud our judgment more than the fog clouds our island. Never let it blind you from seeing the truth, from doing what must be done at the most critical moment. And at this point, more people arrive. A trio of waterbenders come out of the sacred cave because they're pretty close to it. Their day's work is done. They're exhausted finishing out the day. And it's like, oh wait, what were they doing in there? What's going on here, of course? And they just have a bit of a like shocked look on their face about like Malia kind of, you know, dripping with water, Ulo kind of like really close, like, you know, helping her, and they just walk kind of past basically. And Ulo, the chapter ends with this. Ulo says, you know, return to Amihan and take care of the Earthbender. So he finally says it. This is what he wants. This is what actually has to be done. The truth finally super, super clearly said. That this is in fact what the scouts do. Amihan does it. I want you to do it too. It's the only solution. And finally, Malia speaks. Yes, Ulo, she said, trying to force herself to believe he was right about everything. But this has not helped her, is the ultimate takeaway here. This does not feel like a convincing chapter for Malia. If anything, Ulo has made her question even more things. That one, he attacked her basically. He immediately reversed it, but still he showed the threat of his bending against her. And while he maybe presented his point a bit better about even the mother and daughter who you think are completely innocent, their notebooks will be read by people who will make decisions that will probably end up in the future affecting our island. That's the point he's making, and it's a very valid point about, like, this is why we keep the island a secret. But again, is it the correct thing to kill outsiders? That's a bit over the top. What is the better way to do it? And that's why it's so interesting that Roku and Gyatso are here. And these are the characters who you think are going to be the more the negotiators, talking about things. But when will they encounter the islanders, and what will be the correct response? Now that we have these kind of multiple groups, what way is this actually going to work? Who will encounter who first, now that pretty much everyone is here on the island? But the idea here is that Malia is going to have a decision to make now, because the order has been sent. Amihan already knows what it is, and she's basically just waiting for kind of Malia to come back in a way to test her willingness to be a scout, like be involved in the taking out of outsiders. But what decision is she going to make? And then might she make a decision to save the people that have to be killed, and all these sort of things? And then the big question is, if she goes against her tribe, what is left for her in the world? Because she doesn't seem to have a strong connection to her parents, and if she's completely sort of removed herself from the tribe, the only solution would be to leave the island. But who can make that happen for her? So there's a lot of fascinating things going on with Malia in terms of just her life being turned upside down by this shocking thing of basically, go along with the clan by killing. This is what you have to do. You have to kill these people you don't think you need to kill, but to maintain the trust of the clan leader, the chief, you have to kill. And she clearly is not into this. So the next chapter for Malia is going to be pretty important. So there is the discussion on chapter 16. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts on this one are. What way do you view Ulo as a character? How much of the clan's kind of backstory, its legends, do you think are actually true? The other clans that lived on the island, are they real? Who actually took them out? What are your thoughts on that whole situation? But in the comments, let me know that. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.